What's up, my dog-faced pony soldiers? I'm a Caucus. And you're a liar. You've never been to a caucus, you dog-faced pony soldier. We're going to talk about Joe Biden and and the race. After this video, we're going to get into a big breaking news story that I caught on Sunday about the Trump administration. But for now, we're going to talk about, because today is the election, we need to get I'm trying to get as much material out there as I can, and hopefully people share it and comment and watch the video and share it with everybody and share the ideas, because that's the most important thing. If you like the video, please share all of our social media, subscribe. Please subscribe, hit the button twice so you get a little parentheses and get updates about all my videos, and consider becoming a patron on patreon.com. All right. So today is another big election day. It's nothing in comparison to Super Tuesday, but yet some people are calling it Super Tuesday too. It seems to be kind of like a media narrative, and it seems like some people are trying to, kind of make it like this is make or break for Sanders. And don't get me wrong, it's a big deal for Sanders, but we're going to get into the delegate count and why he could lose technically all the delegates and still not lose the election. So people are asking him on MSNBC and CNN, like, will you drop out of the race if you don't win this round of primaries? Like, absolutely not. Joe Biden won no primaries and won his first primary in South Carolina. Nobody was asking him if he was going to drop out of the race after getting stomped in in Iowa, New Hampshire, in Iowa's caucus, in New Hampshire's primary, and Nevada's caucus, and Bernie Sanders crushing them. And if they were, maybe I'm wrong, but they weren't pushing it like they're pushing this against Sanders, that's for sure. So today, what we have is, as I said in a previous video, there's 352 delegates up for grabs in the states of Michigan, Washington, Missouri, Mississippi, Idaho, and North Dakota. North Dakota is the one state that has a caucus in this round. I'm just going to read you what you need the number of votes you need to get the nomination. So you need 1,991 delegates to win the Democratic nomination on the first ballot, meaning you had 50% of the delegates. The total amount of delegates up for grabs in 2020 are 3,979. That's for the... Wait, no, total 300 pledges delegates. I think there's a typo in this. It says pledges delegates. I believe they mean pledge delegates. Anyway, and I do apologize to the writers of both the articles I used in the last video. I meant to post them down below. Something happened. I must have accidentally deleted them, so they're not below the video. But I did cite them, and they are on my page. The links are on my Patreon post. So anyway, Biden currently has 667 delegates, and Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders has 575. Independent senator from Vermont. Bernie Sanders, independent's important. Anyway, so here we go. I'm going to read an article about Joe Biden and his history, a very long history, of cutting Social Security. So this is from The Intercept. And it says, the title is, Fact Check. Joe Biden has advocated cutting Social Security for 40 years. This is by Ryan Grimm. It was published January 13th, 2020. As early as 1984, that's actually the year I was born, and as recently as 2018, former Vice President Joe Biden called for cuts to Social Security in the name of saving the program and balancing the federal budget. Last week, Senator Bernie Sanders highlighted Biden's record on Social Security and prosecuting the case that Biden isn't the most electable candidate. You could say that again. That's from me. The issue could be raised again in Tuesday night's debate. After a Sanders campaign newsletter continued the attack on Biden's Social Security record, the Biden campaign complained to fact-checkers at PolitiFact that his comments were being taken out of context. Placed in context, however, Biden's record on Social Security is far worse than one offhand remark. Indeed, Biden has been advocating for cuts to Social Security for roughly 40 years. And after a Republican wave swept Congress in 1994, Biden's support for cutting Social Security and his general advocacy for budget austerity made him a leading combatant in the centrist wing battle against the party's retreating liberals in the 1980s and 90s. When I argued that we should freeze federal spending, I should do it. I should try my Biden impression. I gotta work on it. Let's try it. When I argued that we should freeze federal spending, I meant Social Security as well. He told the Senate in 1995, "I meant Medicare and Medicaid. I meant veterans benefits. I meant every single solitary thing in the government. And I not only tried it once, I tried it twice, I tried it a third time, and I tried it a fourth time." A freeze would have reduced the amount that would be paid out, cutting the program's benefit. The truth is, last election did one thing, Biden continued. "I do not know whether it really made you guys a majority party for long. I do not know. We will find out. I know one thing it did. What it did was it made sure that there was nobody left on the left in my party who, in fact, said we do not care about moving the budget toward balance." This is an interesting quote. It's within the article. It's from Walker Bragman, at Walker Bragman. That's WalkerBragman on Twitter. And he's, or that's it, yeah. So it says, "It's important to point out for people like at Nate Silver 538, who claim this stuff is too old to be relevant given Biden's 8 years as VP, that the Obama administration offered up Social Security cuts as part of a grand bargain with an increasingly radical right-wing GOP. It's also important, I'm going to take a pause to point out that when we talk about Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton being moderates, really these people are conservative. The pendulum has swung the other way. Bernie Sanders is considered a moderate in most countries in the world, definitely in Europe, and he was considered a moderate in this country and could have ran for either party in the 50s. And that's a fact, up until the 50s. Could have ran for Republican Party, Democratic Party, could have ran for, anyway. So he's a moderate by actual definition, but we've changed these definitions. The mainstream media and the party elites have made sure to change these definitions to make the pendulum go further and further to the right. Anyway, all right. What Biden was expressing was a common sentiment among the centrist faction of the party in the 1980s and 90s, the belief that old tax and spend liberals were out and that a type of new Democrat was needed, one who understood the necessity of fiscal restraint. Cutting spending was the only way, he argued, to salvage what was left of the Great Society and New Deal. The mentality of Biden-style Democrats that the best the party could do was play defense was dominant for a generation. It's now being fundamentally challenged, not just in the presidential campaign, but in congressional primaries across the country. Biden himself, at least on his campaign website, now supports making Social Security more generous, not less. But that's at odds with decades of his own advocacy, a record that could become a major political liability among voters concerned Biden will finally get his wish to trim back Social Security checks. Because about half of black seniors on Social Security rely on it as their primary means of support, any trimming of the program hits those beneficiaries particularly hard. Over the years, Biden in speeches and interviews has often taken pains to let listeners know that he's taken an unpopular stance, being explicit about the risk he knows he's taking. One of the things my political adversaries say to me is, "Whoa, don't touch the third rail," Biden told Tim Russert on Meet the Press while running for president in 2007. Just want to reiterate, my Biden is not very good. Neither is my Trump, but you know what? Let's have some fun with it. I'll work on it. He's just as difficult he's pretty difficult to listen to, like Trump. And sometimes he's not as bad because he seems to have some level of empathy, and he's got his little sob story, which is legitimate, but I think he manipulates for political gain because he's running on practically nothing. I mean, the guy's got no campaign strategy. He's running on no fair policy. He's got a horrible record. But, I mean, Trump is just impossible for me to listen to. But I guess I'm going to have to listen to them both so I can do a better impression for you guys. I do a better Bernie. Anyway, with this year's presidential contest being fought over the terrain of electability, Biden's 35-plus-year effort to cut Social Security, arguably the most popular government program in existence, is potentially a major liability among older voters, and hypocrisy has never held Trump back from making an effective political attack. It's an important point. And this, you need to share this information with the older generation, because they're getting scared by the media to vote for a stinker, which is Biden, who could easily lose to Trump and who doesn't have their best interest at heart. He wants to cut Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, etc. He also has screwed up, he's him and Obama and Bush and Hillary Clinton and all those people are the reason, the party elites in both parties are the reason why we have Donald Trump. So we need something different, and we need to protect and add to these programs, not subtract from them. Basic economics will tell you that austerity programs, having an austerity run government where you cut programs and don't spend actually hurt the economy more and more. It's absurd, and we could print money and we don't print enough, quite frankly. This idea that we have this, one of the reasons our economy hurts is because we print too much money is actually the opposite of true. If you look it up, Japan actually prints like 3 times more money than us and has a way more fair, a bigger booming economy, and a way more, the distribution of wealth is way more balanced. So in other words, most people have more, so it's, people need to understand basic economics. And I think I explained it pretty simply, and it's verifiable, so check it out. Okay, so again, I'm going to repeat this sentence just because I really wanted to hit how hard and how important this is. With this year's presidential contest being fought over the terrain of electability, Biden's 35-plus year effort to cut Social Security, arguably the most popular government program in existence, is potentially a major liability among older voters, and hypocrisy has never held Trump back from making an effective political attack. Biden's historical position also stands in stark contrast to Senators Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, both of whom support increasing benefits and have offered ways to make the program solvent indefinitely. As Bernie Sanders himself said in 2015, after all of these quotes, Joe Biden is a man who has devoted his entire life to public service and to the well-being of working families and the middle class, said Andrew Bates, a spokesperson for Biden. Biden's fixation on cutting Social Security dates back to the Reagan era. One of Ronald Reagan's first major moves as president was to implement a mammoth tax cut tilted toward the wealthy and to increase defense spending. Biden, a Delaware senator at the time, supported both moves. The heightened spending and reduced revenue focused public attention on the debt and deficit, giving fuel to a push for a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution. In the midst of that debate, Biden teamed up with Iowa Republican Senator Chuck Grassley to call for a freeze on federal spending and insisted on including Social Security in that freeze, even as the Reagan administration fought to protect the program from cuts. Listen to that. Ronald Reagan was fighting to not cut Social Security because it was so popular and it would hurt them. And maybe he believed in it, I'm not sure. But Joe Biden was fighting for it. So he was more right than Ronald Reagan. I don't mean correct, I mean more right-wing than Ronald Reagan. By the way, I haven't read this article yet, so I didn't set that up before when I was saying that. It's just a fact, and I studied political science and history my whole life, so yeah. Anyway, that's pretty astonishing. I did not know that. Wow. It was part of the Democratic approach at the time not just to match Republicans, but to get to their right at times as well, as Biden also did on criminal justice policy. He's terrible on criminal justice reform. The crime bill is an awful bill that Joe Biden pushed and supported, and it has put a ton of innocent people behind bars and has flooded our prison system, has privatized them, has made them less accountable, and has just caused this country just loads of problems. Stop people from voting, stop people from being able to contribute to society and get back to the workforce, and taking people away from their families and friends and communities where they would otherwise be helping and be part of people's lives. Okay, I'll continue. So when those of my friends in the Democratic and Republican parties say to me, how do you expect me to vote for your proposal? Does it not freeze Social Security COLAs for 1 year? Are we not saying there will be no cost of living increases for 1 year? The answer to that is yes. That is what I am saying, Biden said in a Senate floor speech in April 1984. God, I was born in April 1984, specifically April 22nd. Earth Day is my birthday. It was also actually Easter the year I was born, so it was 2 holidays. Anyway, Biden said in a floor speech in 1984, referring to the adjustment that millions of seniors look for every day. Okay, excuse me a second. Biden was facing re-election to the Senate in 1984, which was shaping up to be a heavily Republican cycle, and continued returning to the issue of Social Security. His plan with Grassley was backed the New York Times reported in May 1984, by a bevy of business trade groups, including the Chamber of Commerce of the United States, the National Federation of Independent Businesses, Business Executives for National Security, and the National Association of Manufacturers. The Biden-Grassley plan was ultimately rejected, but Biden never wavered on it, arguing in 1988. Excuse me, let me make sure I say that clearly. He was arguing in 1988 that he had been able to cut Social Security. He'd have been able to save other social programs and force Republicans to cut defense spending. Unbelievable. I introduced an amendment. This is Biden. I introduced an amendment, notwithstanding my, quote, liberal credentials of freezing the federal budget. Absolute freeze. Biden boasted. I did it for a simple reason. I sat on the budget committee for 11 years, and I'd find the same thing occur every time. We'd start off with grandiose ideas of how we're going to cut the budget. We would never touch entitlements. We would never touch the defense budget. And we couldn't touch the interest on the debt, which meant that out of $1 trillion budget, that left us only $156 billion. And what we would do each year is we would go out and cut out education, food stamps, Head Start, welfare payments on the down line. Everything that I cared about got cut, because at the very end, we'd say, well, we've got to make some cuts. And that would be the path of least resistance. That political approach, that by ceding to Republicans they will respond by compromising in return, has been thoroughly discredited by the last 40 years of events, though it remains the animating argument of Biden's campaign. It's an absurd proposition. It's never worked, and it just shows you that the Democratic Party actually wants these cuts and is more concerned about the business class and the politicians' power and money than they really care about the worker, because nothing has been given back by the Republicans. They just demand more cuts, and like the article just stated, certainly true during the Obama-Biden administration from 2008 to 2016. They gave up and broke campaign promises, extending the Bush tax cuts permanently for the wealthy. And also just minor, tiny tax cuts for the middle and lower class, but massive ones for the rich. All kinds of things. Never mind. In November 1995, he again reminded the public of his deficit hawkery. I'm a Democrat that voted for constitutional amendment to balance the budget. I've introduced on 4 occasions, entire plans to balance a budget, he said on the Senate floor. I tried with Senator Grassley back in the 1980s to freeze all government spending, including Social Security, including everything. I'm trying here. Let's try to make it so like it, because he slurs his words and connects them, but so you can still understand me, and I'm also not very good at it. He does kind of sound a little more southern, like he's like doing that southern twang, kind of like a Bush, but that might be me doing a bad job. When I introduced my budget freeze proposal years ago, and also, by the way, what's that guy that does, he did a Biden on SNL, he's in a bunch of movies, a bunch of Judd Apatow stuff. He does the voice in the Cleveland show with a short guy. I can't believe I'm blanking on his name, sorry, man. But yeah, I saw him do Biden, and he kind of did it the way I'm doing it. I think it's stuck in my head, but anyway. When I introduced my budget freeze proposal years ago, the liberals in my party said, it's an awful thing you are doing, Joe. All the programs we care about, you are freezing them. Money for the blind, the disabled, education, and so on, Biden continued. My argument then is one I make now, which is the strongest, most compelling reason to be for this amendment, or an amendment, that if we do not do that, all the things I care most about are going to be gone. Gone. The first few months of 1995 were taken up with debate over another GOP-led balanced budget amendment, with Biden arguing forcefully to exclude Social Security from it. After the year 2014, we will be in deficit in the Social Security system, he warned. It seems pretty clear to me this is about 2 things. 1, they need the Social Security dollars to make the deficit look like it is less than it is. And then the next step is they are going to need to try to deal with changing it to increase the amount of money they get in the trust funds to make the deficit look even less, which means that Social Security is going to get hit. Biden pushed for an amendment to carve Social Security out of the balanced budget amendment, Clear as it may have been, the amendment to protect Social Security failed. Biden voted for the balanced budget amendment anyway, even after his multiple warnings that it would undercut Social Security. It was, in fact, the argument over Social Security that torpedoed the balanced budget amendment by a single vote on the Senate floor, after it had already passed the House. After days of persuasion, the Republicans supporting the amendment were unable to attract the one last vote they needed for a two-thirds majority, resulting in a victory for Democrats, who raised doubts in the final hours about whether the Social Security Trust Fund would be safe if the measure became law. The New York Times reported in March 1995. Biden's inability to bring along one additional Democratic colleague had saved the program and saved the Constitution from being amended with a draconian fiscal constraint mechanism. Ironically, the budget would reach balance anyway by the end of the decade as federal revenue climbed, the result of an economy in hyperdrive thanks to a tech bubble. President George W. Bush turned that surplus into a mammoth tax cut for the wealthy, and within just a few years, Biden was again calling for cuts to Social Security to deal with the deficit. The American people know we have to fix Social Security, Biden said in 2007. They know we're going to have to make some tough decisions. In his 2007 interview with Russert as a presidential candidate, the Meet the Press host asked Senator, "We have a deficit. We have Social Security and Medicare looming. The number of people on Social Security and Medicare is now 40 million people. It's going to be 80 million in 15 years. Would you consider looking at these programs' age of eligibility?" "Absolutely," Biden said. "Cost of living, put it all on the table?" "The answer is absolutely," Biden said, reminding Russert that earlier in his career he had been part of the small number of senators who had come up with the deal that raised the retirement age and promised to protect each other from voters' outrage at the cuts. "I was one of 5 people. I was the junior guy in the meeting with Bob Dole and George Mitchell when we put Social Security on the right path for 60 years. I'll never forget what Bob Dole said. After we reached an agreement about gradually raising the retirement age, etc., he said, 'Look, here's the deal. We all put our foot in the boat one at a time.' And he kicked. He stepped like he was stepping into a boat. And we all make the following deal. If any one of the challengers running against the incumbent Democrats or Republicans attack us on this point, we'll all stay together. That's the kind of leadership that is needed. Social Security is not the hard one to solve. Medicare, that is the gorilla in the room, and you've got to put all of it on the table." At Iowa's Jefferson-Jackson dinner in November 2007, weeks from the Iowa caucus, Biden again returned to Social Security. "The American people know we have to fix Social Security," he added. "They know we can't grow our way to a solution. They know we're going to have to make some tough decisions. They're ready to make those decisions. They're ready to step up. We have to be ready to straightforwardly tell them what we're about to do." As vice president, Biden was involved in multiple administration attempts to cut Social Security as part of a grand bargain with Republicans, all of them blocked by Tea Party Republicans who couldn't agree to any tax increases. In 2014, Senator Rand Paul, Republican of Kentucky, said at a conservative event that Biden had privately told him he was supporting of raising the retirement age and means testing Social Security benefits. "I asked the vice president, don't we have to raise the age? Wouldn't means testing and raising the age solve the problem?" Paul recounted, with Senators Ted Cruz and Mike Lee on stage, adding that Biden said yes in private, but will not say it in public. Paul hadn't been paying close enough attention. See, that's important. Biden says one thing in private and then says a different in public. He lies. Now, Bernie Sanders has never had that issue, and he never will. He's an honest man fighting for honesty and for fairness. So get out, vote, tell everybody how important this election is. He's the best to beat Trump. He's had the best statistics for like 5 or 6 years since they've been taking him, since before the 2016 election. This is when they all started campaigning. Sanders is the best candidate to win. He excites the base. He helps the down ballot race. I don't listen to what the mainstream media is saying and what other people are telling you, because their arguments are most often coming from the elites, whether they know it or not. Maybe somebody at work is saying them. They think, oh, that's a good point. They're just literally, whether they know it or not, whether they heard it from somebody else, they think that people are using independent analysis and using their brains, but it's just talking points from MSNBC, CBS, NBC, CNN, ABC, Fox, etc. Although in fairness, Fox has covered Bernie Sanders in a more fair way than CBS. Than NBC. Jesus, probably them too. Actually, I don't watch it as much, but when I've seen it, maybe it might be true as well. But MSNBC and CNN, which is saying something. mostly the Democratic Party elites and the consultants and all these people that get paid big bucks to miscall elections and spin propaganda and not be held to account when they lie or withhold information or give faulty or dishonest information or say things like, people are saying, they say that all the time. When people in your $10 million to $50 million apartment or house neighborhood in New York City, is that what people are saying in your wealthy neighborhood on the playground, as they say? Anyway, let's continue. It's almost over. The article. A few years later, at a Brookings Institution event in April 2018, Biden addressed Social Security again. Paul Ryan was correct when he did the tax code. What's the first thing he decided we had to go after? Social Security and Medicaid. Now we need something about Social Security and Medicare, Biden said, then added in a whisper, that's the only way you can find room to pay for it. Last week, the Biden campaign told PolitiFact that Biden was mocking Ryan and being sarcastic. Immediately after his whisper, he went into the kind of adjustments to Social Security he thought should be made, the same type that Paul said he told him supported privately. Now, I don't know a whole lot of people in the top 1/10 of 1% or the top 1% who are relying on Social Security when they retire. I don't know a lot of them, Biden said, alluding to the need to means test Social Security. So we need a pro-growth progressive tax code that treats workers as job creators as well, not just investors, that gets rid of unproductive loopholes like stepped-up basis, and it raises enough revenue to make sure that the Social Security and Medicare can stay. It still needs adjustments, but can stay, and pay for the things we all acknowledge will grow the country. When the program is popular, adjustment is a Washington euphemism for cuts, but you can count on Trump to use the more common term. Ryan Grim is the author of the book We've Got People, From Jesse Jackson to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, The End of Big Money and the Rise of a Movement. All right, so I just wanted to add that they're asking for donations on The Intercept and saying, they say, how likely is it that the story you just read would have been produced by a different news outlet if The Intercept hadn't done it? How many covert wars, miscarriages of justice, and dystopian technologies would remain hidden if our reporters weren't on the beat? Consider what the world of social media would look like without The Intercept. The kind of reporting we do is essential to democracy, but it is not easy, cheap, or profitable. The Intercept is an independent, nonprofit news outlet. We don't have ads, so we depend on our members, 35,000 and counting, to help us hold the powerful to account. Joining is simple and doesn't cost a lot. You can become a sustaining member for just as little as $3 or $5 a month. That's all it takes to support the journalism you rely on. I think it's fair for them to use their content, and if that's true, that they're and realize they were a nonprofit. I know that there's been some great articles in The Intercept. So, consider that. But right now, what we need to consider is sharing this information all over social media, talking to people out in public, talking to people waiting for a coffee, waiting for your food, getting gas. You need to tell people it's Bernie or bust time. It's time to get out there and make phone calls for Bernie, knock on doors, send text messages. Just talk to everybody and have some real reasons why Bernie's important to you. I'm just trying to help so you understand Joe Biden's record and why it's so important that we elect an honest person like Bernie Sanders. Go back and look through Joe Biden's record for 40 years, and he has just done everything that's the antithesis of the things we need. He's hurt this economy. He's hurt this country. He's hurt democracy. He's been dishonest. He's lied countless times. I mean, if you compared him and Trump, who knows who lied more? That's how bad it is, quite frankly. You have to understand why Bernie Sanders is saying he'll support him. He understands how much of a threat Donald Trump is, as do I. I just honestly hope that Bernie Sanders is off in the Green Party ticket and takes it this time. Because he didn't last time, and he should. And he should be on every ballot in the 50 states. There's some debate and even some thought on my end as to whether or not that could split the Democratic ticket and Trump could win again. But quite frankly, the Democratic Party is screwing this up really bad just because they'd rather have Trump. And they don't mind putting up somebody with clear cognitive issues who's dishonest, who is not a progressive, who isn't even technically a moderate. He's more of a conservative on numerous issues, and who does not excite the base. And many people, I'm afraid, will stay home and not vote for Joe Biden. I might be one of them. I have some serious considerations to make. I'm not sure if I'm going to vote for Joe Biden. I didn't vote for Hillary Clinton. I voted for Jill Stein in 2016. And I don't like the idea of voting for the lesser of two evils anymore, but I'm going to reserve judgment and how I feel about that for the future. So I'm not telling anybody what to do when it comes to voting. I think everybody should get out and vote. And I think everybody should still vote for the general election regardless of what happens. But I do think people need to take to the streets and start watching what's going on. There's all kinds of discrepancies in Los Angeles, a big Bernie area, where he has a lot of support. There's issues in Texas with Harris County, which is run by a Democrat, and they didn't have enough voting machines. They didn't have enough workers at colleges. They're hurting the youth vote and the Latino vote and the black vote, and that's the areas that are having problems. And those are the big areas that vote for Bernie Sanders, and big constituencies. And I did a whole video on that in the past. On the Texas voter suppression. I need to do more. There's just so much going on. But look, get out there and vote. If you like the video, please hit like. Please subscribe to my channel if you like what you see, or even if you just like some of it, or get your brain going. Maybe you don't agree with me on all issues. Maybe you just agree with me on some issues, but you like the information you're getting, and it helps you, and it can build, your ability to debate and your knowledge. Share it, talk about it, and please consider becoming a patron on patreon.com and throwing a few bucks my way so I can eat some food and keep bringing you videos. Still waiting for that first donation to come in. Come on, people, you can do it. All right, this is John Smith with Punk Rock Politics. Get out there and vote, volunteer, make your voices heard. Let's make this one for the record books. Let's make it for the guy who has the most individual contributions, the most money ever given to any presidential campaign as well, the most people donating to any presidential campaign, the first campaign to unionize and pay workers a decent living wage, and the first person we've had in one of the major parties in a long time running for president or any office, besides recently, since 2016 and 18, some of these primaries and stuff, but with the progressive candidates like AOC and Jay Powell, etc. But, this is the chance to vote for somebody who is going to fight for you. And he says, not me, us. He doesn't lie to you like all the other candidates that were on that Democratic debate stage, like Donald Trump. He's saying, and like Joe Biden, not vote for me and I'll fix all your problems. No, vote for me and I'm going to help you fight. I'm going to be sympathetic to the working people. I'm going to help you fight. We're going to fight for Medicare for all. We're going to take to the streets and we're going to make this country great like it should have been in the first place. We're the richest country in the world, and it's just abhorrent that we don't have we don't have health insurance for everybody. Every other, industrialized, every other industrialized nation in the world has this, and we don't. And there's 22 studies now that say Medicare for all would save money and save lives. The most recent study with Yale and other colleges involved said that we would save 68,000 lives a year and $450 billion. Now, what's your argument against it? Oh no, we need a bunch of people to make a ton of money off of it. We need inefficiencies. The Republican Party and conservative Democrats are always talking about efficiency. Buttigieg and Biden and all their terrible attacks on this bill are just a joke, and they're just lies because they take money from pharmaceutical industry, or they take money from insurance companies, they take money from big contractors that make hospitals and so whatever. They take money from the industry. They're lying to you, and all the evidence is there. So get out, fight, vote, and stand up, and maybe the coronavirus will keep some of the older, more conservative voters at home. I'm not saying that's funny or it's cool, but maybe it'll happen. So the truth is that the youth has, we have better immunities to these things. So hopefully the youth gets out there and votes hard. Bring your hand sanitizer, or just, make sure to keep your distance, especially if somebody's coughing or something like that, and be careful, but do not stay home. Go out and vote. I mean that of everybody. Everybody should go out and vote. I'm not saying don't, but this coronavirus thing is scary, and quite frankly, Joe Biden is not going to. He'll be better than Trump on things like the coronavirus, but that's assuming he even has any say in what his administration is. And I don't know, maybe they will go very conservative, and maybe those people won't be any better. I mean, I would think they'd be better. I would hope they'd be better. And there's some evidence to show they would probably be better, but on issues like that. But the guy's got issues. I can't believe they're getting behind this guy. What a joke. Anyway, and look, I'm not trying to alienate Biden supporters. I'm trying to just really give you facts. I really, really want Biden supporters to take a look at his record and really consider the alternative, and that he's not better to beat Trump, and he might lose to Trump. It's very likely he could lose to Trump. Trump is going to have a field day with this guy. This guy can't form a sentence. He's like out doing rallies after Super Tuesday, like the other night, of only eight minutes he spoke, and even then he made a bunch of verbal gaffes. I mean, you can't say Trump is dangerous and incompetent and then put somebody just as, or in some ways more dangerous and incompetent, to fight him. That's an absurd proposition. The Democratic Party elites have really botched this up, so the voters better not. So let's get out there and let's put Bernie Sanders in the White House. Yeah! Thanks for joining Punk Rock Politics. Peace.